Wife cheated with her broke ex and demanded half of everything, but she didn't know my mom secretly owned it all. I never thought I'd be sharing my personal life online, but I'm at a loss. I need an outside perspective because everything has hit a point I can't ignore. I'm 35 and run a successful tech consulting business that I built from scratch over the past decade. I'm comfortable enough not to worry about the day-to-day, and I'm proud of that. I've been married to Olivia, who's 33, for 2 years. We were together for 5 years in total, and for most of that time, I thought things were going well. But it seems I was the only one who thought that way. Olivia used to work in PR, but right after we got married, she decided she wanted to take a break and focus on us. At the time, I was supportive. I figured she'd eventually jump back into the workforce, and my business was doing well enough to support both of us comfortably. I wanted her to feel secure and believed this was a temporary phase. But over the past few months, things started to change. I know it sounds cliché, but she became distant, almost cold. She'd barely greet me when I got home from work, and I noticed she was going out a lot more, often with the excuse of meeting friends or needing some time alone. I tried to be understanding, thinking she was just going through something. After all, marriage has its ups and downs, right? One night, she told me she'd be out with friends and would come back late. It wasn't unusual by that point, so I didn't think much of it. I stayed up working on a new project and eventually went to bed. She came home quietly and went straight to the guest room, a habit she'd started, claiming she didn't want to wake me. A few days later, she was out with friends again, or so she said. Around 11 p.m., I heard her laptop buzzing on the kitchen counter. She'd forgotten it there, and I saw a message notification pop up. Out of instinct, I glanced at it. The name Ryan appeared, a name I hadn't heard before. My heart dropped when I saw the message. Can't wait until this is over. We'll finally be free. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but my gut was telling me something was very wrong. I opened the message thread, feeling like I needed to know. What I found was the stuff of nightmares. Ryan wasn't just some friend. He was Olivia's ex, the same guy she used to call a loser with no direction or ambition. And here they were, messaging back and forth about a plan to be free and live off the money she'd get from our divorce. They'd been in contact for months, and it was clear they had a whole scheme worked out. Olivia and Ryan were banking on her getting half of my assets, which would apparently give him the easy life he'd always wanted. I couldn't believe it. I was just the stepping stone in their twisted plan. The messages detailed how they'd finally be set once Olivia got half of everything. I felt sick reading it all. The worst part? She was making it sound like she was sacrificing her time with me to secure their future, as if she'd been working alongside me all these years. I spent the rest of that night replaying every missed sign, every time she'd brushed me off, every flimsy excuse. By morning, one thing was clear: I needed to confront her, but smartly. I wasn't about to let her and her leech of an ex get away with this. That evening, Olivia walked in like it was just another night. I asked her to sit down and told her, "We need to talk." She played it cool, saying, "Sure, what's up?" I cut straight to it. "Who's Ryan?" For a second, her face twitched, but then she shrugged, feigning innocence. "What are you talking about?" she said, but I held up her phone, open to Ryan's message. Her face fell. She tried to shift the blame, snapping, "You went through my phone?" Like that was the only issue here. But I fired back. "Yeah, I did. And I'm glad because now I know the truth. So drop the act. How long has this been going on?" She eventually admitted she'd been seeing Ryan for months, but instead of apologizing, she looked almost relieved. "Yes, I've been seeing Ryan," she said bluntly. "I want a divorce." I couldn't believe her nerve. No apology, no guilt. And then, as if she'd been rehearsing, she added, I deserve to be happy too. You're always working, more focused on your business than on me. I'm fighting for my share because I put a lot into this marriage and deserve half. I laughed bitterly. Half. Olivia, you've barely lifted a finger for this. I've been the one working late, stressing over clients, and building this business. You've had every comfort without lifting a finger to help. She just rolled her eyes, saying, That's not fair. I left my career to support you. I replied, Support me? You quit because you wanted an easy life, and I let you because I thought we were a team. Clearly, I was wrong. That's when she leaned in, trying to look intimidating. I don't care what you think. I'm getting what's mine, and if you try to cheat me, I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are. But she didn't know my mom was the real owner of everything. Years ago, my mom and I worked out a protective arrangement. She retained ownership, while I managed and built the business. Olivia had no claim to it. So, when I finally told her this, her face turned pale. She thought she had this all figured out, that I'd just roll over. But not this time. Her expression shifted from smug to slightly confused. What do you mean? She asked, her tone cautious. Exactly what I said, I replied. You're not getting half of what you think you are. Go ahead. Talk to your lawyer, do whatever you need to, but you're not getting your hands on the business. Her face flushed, and for the first time, her confidence faltered. She hadn't figured out that the business wasn't in my name, but she knew something was off. Fine, she said finally, crossing her arms. If that's how you want to play it, then we'll play. But don't think for a second I'm going down without a fight. She grabbed her bag, stormed out, and slammed the door behind her, leaving me alone with a mix of anger and relief. I was furious at her betrayal, at her scheming behind my back while demanding a piece of everything I'd built. But now, at least, I knew the truth. I wasn't in the dark, playing the clueless husband anymore. I could finally see her for who she really was. Once she was gone, I sat there, going over it all in my head. The red flags I'd ignored were now glaringly obvious: the late nights, the coldness, the secrecy. She thought she'd struck gold with me, that she'd leave with her ex and a chunk of my life in her pocket. But she had no idea what was coming. After letting it all sink in, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She wanted a fight, and I was ready. In the days that followed, I kept things calm at home. I didn't let on that I had a plan in motion. Olivia started showing her true colors more openly, acting like she was entitled to everything. Meanwhile, I hired a lawyer, a sharp one who specialized in complex financial cases. After going over the paperwork with him, he assured me, this setup is rock solid. If she thinks she's getting her hands on your business, she's in for a rude awakening. Hearing that was a relief, but I knew Olivia wouldn't give up. She had hired a lawyer too, a notorious bulldog, known for dragging clients through grueling legal battles. I hoped we could settle through mediation, avoiding a drawn-out court fight, but I was prepared for the worst. The first mediation session arrived. Olivia was already there, looking smug, as though she'd already won. She sat with her lawyer, whispering and casting side glances at me, as if she'd started mentally spending the money. My lawyer began laying out the basics of my finances, and right away, Olivia's lawyer went for the assets, especially the business. Olivia's gaze was locked on me, clearly expecting a payout. But when my lawyer laid out the documents showing that the business was in my mom's name, everything changed. Wait, her lawyer stammered, confusion plain on his face. So the business isn't in your name? Nope, I replied evenly. The business is legally owned by my mom. It's been that way from the start. I saw Olivia's face fall, and her lawyer's confidence vanished. They hadn't expected this. My lawyer calmly explained the setup. Every substantial asset was tied to my mom. Olivia finally snapped. "You put everything in your mother's name?" "Yes," I replied. "Years ago. It was just smart planning." Her lawyer tried to argue that she had marital rights, that she'd given up her career to support me, but my lawyer held firm. "The holdings are separate," he said. "She has rights to certain assets, yes, but her claim to the business is non-existent." Olivia crossed her arms, her face growing angrier by the second. "I deserve more than that," she spat. "I sacrificed my career for him. I took care of everything at home." I shook my head. "You've never worked a day in the business. You didn't contribute a dime. It's mine, or rather, it's in my mom's name." She glared at me, her lawyer looking uncomfortable. We went through the rest of the session, and with every document we presented, Olivia's frustration grew. Every asset she thought she'd get her hands on was protected. Her lawyer tried poking holes, but there was nothing to find. After the session, as I walked out, I could feel Olivia's eyes boring into my back, full of fury. She stormed off with her lawyer, leaving me feeling both relief and anger. This wasn't over, not by a long shot, but her shocked expression was a small victory. When I got home that evening, Olivia was waiting. The second I stepped in, she started in on me. "You've been hiding things this whole time," she shouted. "You set this all up so I'd get nothing admitted." I let out a sigh, trying to keep calm. "No, Olivia. This was just smart planning, long before you were in the picture. You assumed you were entitled to more than what actually exists in my name." "You think you're clever," she hissed. "But don't think I'm done. I'll get what I deserve, one way or another." With that, she stormed off to the guest room, leaving me in silence. From then on, Olivia made it her mission to ruin me. She called friends, family, even clients, spreading lies about how I'd cheated her, hidden assets, and left her destitute. One evening, my friend Sam called, concerned about the rumors he'd heard. "Hey man, what's going on?" "Olivia's been posting some wild stuff on social media about betrayal and lies. She hasn't mentioned you directly, but everyone knows who she's talking about." "It's complicated," I replied, feeling the weight of it all. "She's just upset. Things didn't turn out the way she expected. She thought she'd walk away with half my business, and now she's painting me as the villain." Sam sighed. "Just so you know, people are talking. Some are taking her side. You might want to clear things up." I thanked him for the heads up, but inside, I was fuming. Olivia had done enough damage already, and now she was taking it public, trying to ruin my reputation because things weren't going her way. It hurt to see people buying into her lies, but I refused to stoop to her level. I just hoped the truth would eventually come out. But Olivia wasn't satisfied with spreading rumors. She wanted more, something concrete to bring me down. A few days later, my lawyer called. Olivia had filed for a full financial audit, convinced I was hiding assets. "She's grasping at straws," my lawyer chuckled. "Let her dig, there's nothing there that isn't on paper." Though his confidence was reassuring, the constant demands and document requests wore me down. Every other day, I'd get notice of another request, like she thought that if she kept pushing, some hidden stash would appear. One night, I came home to a stack of legal papers on the kitchen counter. More phishing. I called my lawyer, double-checking that we were in full compliance. He assured me we were, but it was clear Olivia was trying to wear me out. Meanwhile, life at home was unbearable. Every conversation with her was hostile, every look loaded with resentment. She barely spoke to me unless it was to accuse me of hiding things or demand explanations, acting as if I'd wronged her in some unforgivable way. As if that wasn't enough, she started spreading stories to our mutual friends about how I was emotionally abusive, isolating her, and controlling her. None of it was true. Olivia had always been independent, often out with friends or family. But people believed her. One afternoon, I ran into an old friend who was polite but distant. I could tell he'd heard her side. "I'm fine," I replied, keeping it brief. "A lot of things are being twisted around. Don't believe everything you hear." But it was too late. People had already formed their opinions, and Olivia seemed to be winning in the court of public opinion. It was exhausting and painful. As the weeks dragged on, Olivia's desperation became more apparent. Word got around that she was asking her family and friends for money to keep up with her legal fees. She'd underestimated how costly this would be. Part of me felt satisfaction watching her plans unravel, but the damage she'd done was too deep to enjoy any sense of victory. Then came the latest round of demands: subpoenas for bank statements, asset lists, even documents from my mom. Olivia was pulling every string to find something to support her accusations. My lawyer assured me that my mom's assets were legally separate, but the fact that Olivia was dragging her into this mess made my blood boil. One night, sitting alone in the quiet house, I reflected on everything Olivia had done. The lies, the manipulation, the entitled demands. It was clear the woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone who didn't care how much damage she caused as long as she got her way. She thought she could break me, that I'd cave and hand over what she wanted just to get her to stop. But she was wrong. After weeks of her schemes, the court date finally arrived. I met with my lawyer the day before to ensure everything was set. We went over every document, the business records, the financial setups, everything proving my transparency. He reminded me to stay calm and stick to the facts, no matter what Olivia tried to pull. Walking into the courtroom, Olivia was already there with her lawyer. She wouldn't look at me, but I could see the anger on her face. It was like she'd convinced herself she deserved half of everything. But today she was about to get a reality check. Her lawyer began with a speech painting Olivia as the devoted wife who'd sacrificed everything for me. Hearing him twist reality was infuriating, but I kept my composure, knowing my turn was coming. When my lawyer took the floor, he went straight to the facts. He presented documents showing the business had been legally owned by my mom from day one, explaining the financial structure and trust setup. Olivia's face shifted from smug to shocked. She really thought she could walk in, cry a little, and leave with half of everything. Her lawyer tried to argue that, even if she hadn't contributed directly, she'd supported the lifestyle, but it held little weight. My lawyer calmly responded that while Olivia was entitled to her fair share in the marriage, the business assets were part of a trust under my mom's name, and Olivia had no legal claim to them. At one point, she snapped at me. "You think this is fair? That I get nothing after everything I did for you?" I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "Olivia, you knew I built this with my mom's support, not yours. You didn't contribute financially or otherwise. The terms were clear from the start." Her lawyer continued pushing, but my lawyer was prepared, countering every claim. After several hours, Olivia finally took the stand, talking about how she'd sacrificed her dreams to support me, painting herself as the long-suffering wife. When she finished, her lawyer looked smug, but the judge wasn't convinced. My lawyer asked me to explain why the business was in my mother's name. I explained. From the beginning, it was for tax and security reasons, set up long before Olivia entered my life. This was just smart planning, not deception. The judge nodded. Olivia's lawyer tried one last argument that her household contributions allowed me to focus on the business. But that didn't stick. In the end, Olivia's attempts to paint herself as a victim backfired. The court ruled fairly, based on facts, and she walked away with far less than she'd expected. Her desperation and lies had brought her nothing, and I finally felt a sense of closure as I left the courtroom, ready to move on with my life. We presented all the evidence showing that Olivia had voluntarily left her job and comfortably lived off the income I earned without ever asking to be involved in the business. After another recess, the judge returned with his decision. I noticed Olivia staring at him, her face tense and hopeful for some kind of victory, but it didn't come. The judge ruled that Olivia had no legal claim to my business or any of the assets tied to it. Since everything was in my mom's name, it was classified as separate property and completely out of Olivia's reach. She was granted a modest settlement, but it was far from the payout she'd hoped for. It was the outcome I had been hoping for, but watching Olivia's face fall as the reality hit was something else entirely. Her face went pale as the verdict was read. She glanced over at her lawyer, as if expecting some last-minute rescue, but there was nothing left to argue. She'd lost, plain and simple. As I walked out of the courtroom, a massive weight lifted off my shoulders. It was finally over all the scheming, the accusations, her attempts to drag me down. In the end, she was walking away with almost nothing. I knew she might still be furious and might still try to paint me as the villain, but I didn't care. I had my business, my future, and my peace of mind. Outside the courthouse, I felt a rush of freedom for the first time in months. The ordeal with Olivia had been exhausting, and the damage she tried to inflict wasn't something I'd forget anytime soon. But seeing her realize her plan had failed was worth it. I could finally move forward, rebuild my life, and leave this whole mess behind me.